and we are joined by Mr. Samir Abbass. He's an Egyptologist. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, first of all, if you can tell us more about the technique or the way how were the pyramids built.
So can I start with a story first?
Yes.
You know, that happened a few months ago. I have a friend, he's American living in Cairo, and he's teaching in an international school. He sent me a message about a new theory came online about how the pyramid is being built. And it was a big shock for me because I looked, it was a video which is very well made. It was a book, or two books actually has been issued by this engineering. He's from Britain, from UK. He introduced himself as a British engineering. He visited the Giza pyramids. He came on a tour, and the tour guide description for him was not convincing, so he decided to came up with his own theory. He said there is no way to move the stones to the building levels, the stones which is used to build the pyramids, except by using a water elevator, which is quite interesting. So we are talking about 2.3 million blocks of stone. An average weight of each stone, when it comes to the Great Pyramid, for example, an average weight of each stone is like 2.5 tons each. And some of the stones used to build the pyramids, the Giza pyramids, or the Great Pyramid more specific, is 25 to 80 tons made out of granite. This engineering, he's talking about wrapping this stone with animal skins for them to float, and he can elevate them to a height of 146 meters to build the pyramids. So it was really a big shock for me, and I wrote down a detailed paper of how it was built. But the interesting thing that his video is very common online, and that's why I suggested the idea of talking about how the pyramid is being built, because it seems that there is a very big mystery, or better to say there is a big misunderstanding about how the pyramids being built. Maybe because we don't have much written evidence from the ancient Egyptians showing the details of how the pyramids being built. Maybe because people, they are lazy to look at academic resources, detailed information, and they go for the easy solutions, aliens or whatever. So building the pyramids, it was a challenge for the ancient Egyptians. It wasn't easy, it was difficult. But it doesn't mean that it's being difficult, it will be impossible. So that's what we will try to clarify today. Before talking about how the process of building or the techniques of building the pyramids, I would like to tell you the story how the pyramids started in Egypt as well. So the first pyramid we have in Saqqara, which is Djoser pyramid, the step pyramid, dates back to 4,650 years ago. Before that, we have tombs. The kings, the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, kings, they have tombs, but in Abydos and other places as well, not in the pyramids. So the invention of the pyramid came with Imhotep, which is an Egyptian engineering. He built the step pyramid, and gradually it was evolved into the true pyramid. The true pyramid is the pyramid which with a casing layer. So instead of steps, it became steep, and that reflects a completely different idea for the ancient Egyptian religious wise. They believed in the sun god, and the rise of the cult of the sun god Ra started to actually become the dominating cult from the fourth dynasty. And they decided to build a resurrection machine for their pharaoh, for their god. This resurrection machine remind them with the power of the sun, because they believe in the earth is flat, and the rays of the sun reach the four corners of the earth, making a pyramid with steep angles. So that is the idea why the pyramids being built. So now I can come to answer your question about the techniques which is used to build the pyramids. First, the location. So choosing the location is very important, because when the ancient Egyptians, when they choose a wrong location in Meidum, the pyramid collapsed shortly after being built. Because the location should be a very solid rock. So you cannot put a weight of nearly 4 million to 6 million tons not on a stable ground. You cannot build that in the Nile Valley. It should be a mountain, on a plateau, in a very solid rock. Not even actually like a weak rock, like a sedimentary weak rock. So that's why they choose Giza, for example, for building the Great Pyramid, because Giza is a big plateau, and this plateau of a solid limestone. So the location is very important. So it is in the west bank of the Nile River, and that has something to do with religious purpose. So the ancient Egyptians, kings and individuals, wanted to be buried in the place where the sun dies, so they can be associated with the sun when the sun comes back again. And no wonder most of the tombs, 95% of the ancient Egyptian tombs, no exaggeration, on the west bank of the Nile River. That is the first part, the location. So the second part is the building material. And normally they are associated together. You cannot expect to build a pyramid like the Great Pyramid or any of the other pyramids in Egypt using millions of blocks of stones, and you choose the wrong location where the stones is very far away from you. So some of the theories, actually, or the misconceptions about the pyramids is it was built with, for example, the Giza pyramids was built with a stone shipped across the Nile River from the east bank to the west bank. That's a very big misconception. So that will take forever, not only 20 or 30 years to finish the pyramid, that will over 100 years to finish the pyramid. Most of the building material which is used to build the pyramids, it was cut from close by, from around the area. So they choose a location where the building material. And that is applied to Giza pyramid. So I'm using Giza pyramid today because that is the most important pyramid we have, and that will as an example of that. So most of the building material come from limestone, which is cut from Giza pyramid. The Sphinx itself, it was a quarry. From these quarries, they cut the stones, and the rock left or remains that's sculptured into the Sphinx. So the second type of building material, which is the casing layer. The casing layer of the best type of limestone ever, and that is the part which is shipped across the Nile River from the east to the west. Only for the casing layer. It came from Torah, which is known for the good quality. Then the third building material is granite, and we are talking about 25 to 80 tons stones in the innermost part of the pyramid, mainly around the burial chamber. And the granite come from Aswan, nearly 800 to 900 kilometers away, shipped across the Nile River all the way to the pyramids in Giza. And the fourth type is black basalt. That was 4 days ago. Actually, I was in the desert trip in an area known as Sudan al-Faras in the north of Karun Lake. That's where the black basalt stone come from, 200 kilometers away from Giza pyramid. In the middle of the desert, on a high in a mountain, the ancient Egyptians cut the stones and they paved a road, which is considered the oldest known paved road in the history of mankind, for moving the black basalt over 12 or 20 kilometers until they make it to the Lake Fayoum, so they can be transported afterward to Giza. So thinking about the logistics of moving the stone itself is really a big issue. So then we come to the following part, which is how they can level the ground, because this pyramid is like building a skyscraper today, so the foundation should be very accurately, very perfectly done. So if it's not leveled perfectly, so this pyramid will be end with leaning, which is cannot tolerate for the weight. So, and for doing that, we have a classical theory, which is using water channels again, so, and the logistics of moving the water up to the plateau is really terrifying. Is difficult. Forgetting that the ancient Egyptians, or forgetting to go to the Egyptian museum. In the Egyptian museum, we have a room which is hardly seen actually by tourists. This room has the tools of the ancient Egyptian people, including the building tools. And in this room, it has the levels which is used to make the statues, make the stones, and make actually the grounds even as well. So using a very basic tools. So after that will comes to how to move the stones from point A to point B. So moving the stones, the good news is the ancient Egyptians, they left a good documentation behind. So they left us, even in the same room, which I'm talking about it in the Egyptian museum, there is a slit, like lean on the wall, put next to the wall, and this slit, which is showing how they used to move things. And we have lots of art, lots of writings and carvings in the ancient Egyptian tombs in Saqqara and other places, which shows how they used to move heavy objects using a slit. Think about a huge block of stone, which could be 80 tons of stone on a slit. What kind of power which is needed to pull these sleds? So modern technology came with not with solution but with explanation. So there is something in the ancient Egyptian art always, which is when coming with pulling the stones on a sled, we find a person standing or sitting on the sled, and this person, he's rinsing the ramps or the road in front of the sled with water. The early archaeologists, they thought that it is a ritual, like a religious ritual, like a purification ritual. But modern science proved that by rinsing the sand, spraying the sand with water, that's reduced the fractions and cut the power needed to move the stones into the half.
So, sir, can you tell us more about the architects who designed the pyramids?
So the father of the architects who designed the pyramids is Imhotep.
Yes.
4,650 years ago. Not only the pyramid, he was the most intellectual scholar in the history of mankind. So by building the step pyramid, he raised the bar so high, and that's created a competition after that. So talking about more specific about the Great Pyramid, it was him, who the architect of the Great Pyramid. So now we were dealing with the logistics of choosing the location of the building materials and cutting the stones and moving the stones. Then we'll come to the most important, critical actually point, which is how to elevate the stone up to the building level. As early as the 5th century BC, 450 BC, Herodotus, a Greek historian, who wrote down the first guidebook about the ancient Egyptian history, he made his own assumption about how they move the stones up to the building level. And in his book, he talked about the wooden lifting devices, which is used to elevate the stone to the building level. And that was another, I would say, not accurate or ridiculous. I will try to be very polite in Ramadan, actually, when I'm talking about these theories. It was this guy, he was talking about something which is he never seen. So this person, he was talking about pyramids, which is built 2,000 years before his arrived to Egypt. This person, he corrupted the whole Egyptian history, not only the pyramids. He's the one who said the pyramids was built by slaves, 100,000 slaves, and the wooden lifting devices, and many other stories, which is not true about the ancient Egyptian civilization. So it's still, still there is a debate. And in the classical theory of moving stones in ancient Egypt up to a higher level was a ramp. So that was very much used, and that is proved as well in many of the unfinished structures, temples, buildings left behind, like the ones in Karnak Temple, the big pylon or the big gate in Karnak Temple. We find the rest of the ramp. But the problem that one ramp is not enough, because if you are talking about one single ramp reaching the pyramid, so to make it actually the angle of the ramp, which is easy enough to move the stones, you need to build a ramp, one single ramp, which is nearly 7 miles long, 10 kilometers long, which doesn't make sense at all. So, and that's why another theory about the spiral ramp going around the pyramid, which does make more sense. But these theories always was not convincing. There is something missing in these theories, and that's why very recent there is a very new theory came with a French engineering. His name, as far as I remember, is Jean Bier, and supported by a famous archaeologist. He's Bob Pryor, American one. So they came with a theory of the inner ramp. So the spiral ramp was not from outside, was from inside.
Yes, Mr. Samir, as we are wrapping up our edition, let's talk more about the mysteries that we don't know about the pyramids.
That's the best way to end actually our talk today. So I do believe that there is still some chambers not found inside some of the pyramids we have. And when I say that, I'm not talking about the Great Pyramid, because the Great Pyramid has been studied very well, but I'm talking about the pyramids in Maydum, and the pyramids in Maydum and Dashur as well.
Yes.
What about the Bent Pyramid, for example? Every pyramid normally in the Old Kingdom has 3 rooms, not for the kings and the queens. No, it's the 3 for the king: the soul, Kaaba and Ghet, which is the soul, the spirit, and the body. So in Giza Pyramid we have 3 rooms. In the Red Pyramid in Dashur, which is the north one, we have 3 rooms has been found. In the Bent Pyramid, only 2 rooms has been found. In Maydum Pyramid, only 1 room has been found. And there is an evidence of another room in Maydum Pyramid, which is I see it with the naked eye, and an evidence, and it should be an evidence of a 3rd room in Dashur Bent Pyramid. The reason why I'm saying that it should be, there is lost chambers inside the Bent Pyramid in Dashur, because the coffin is not found yet. So myself, I haven't had the chance to go inside. Nobody actually has a chance because it's closed for visit. But all of the early archaeologists who have the chance to go and inspect this pyramid from inside, they never talk about there is a coffin inside. That means that it is a time to shift the focus from the Great Pyramid to Maydoum and Dashur and try to find these hidden chambers, and possibly the hidden treasures of Senefru, one of the greatest king of Egypt, could be there.
Mr. Samir Abbass, an Egyptologist, thank you so much for your insight, and thank you so much for being with us on The Breakfast Show.
It was my pleasure.